They called him cursed. 30 men had tried, 30 men had failed. Some limped away with shattered ribs. Others never walked again. And still the black stallion stood, untamed and defiant, in a heat-cracked pen at the far edge of the richest ranch in the territory. His name was Hellfire, and if you strayed too close, he would remind you of it. Ears flat, hooves pounding like gunfire when the train hissed into town, dragging dust and strangers behind it. No one paid much attention to the woman in the plain white dress. She stepped off the passenger car with only a small bag, a folded letterpress against her chest, and eyes that looked like they'd already survived too much. Her name was Eliza. She wasn't what anyone expected. Not the tall, iron-jawed rancher waiting with his arms crossed and no flowers. Not the men leaning outside the saloon who smirked as though she'd already lost. She didn't flinch. She didn't smile. She just walked straight up to the rancher and asked, "Are you Mr. Darrow?" He nodded once, jaw tight. Didn't think you'd actually come. Eliza looked past him, toward the parched hills where dust swirled like ghosts over the dry land. Her voice was low but steady. "Neither did I." That was the beginning. Mr. Darrow was a man built of sharp edges and old scars. 6 feet of silent anger and bitter history. He hadn't wanted a wife, only help. Someone to cook, clean, and stay out of his way. What he got was a woman who asked no favors, made no excuses, and didn't blink when Hellfire nearly trampled a stable boy on her second day there. That night, she found Darrow sitting on the porch, watching the stars bleed into the horizon. "I want to try with him," she said. His head snapped toward her. "With Hellfire? You've seen what he does to grown men." Her eyes didn't waver. "I've seen worse." Then, softly, like stating the weather, "He's not angry. He's afraid." Darrow scoffed, but something in the way she said it made him pause. Most people spoke of breaking the stallion as if it were a prize fight, strength against strength, man against beast. But Eliza, she wasn't talking about conquering. She wasn't even talking about winning. She wanted to understand. By morning, she was at the corral. No rope, no saddle, just her stillness and her voice. Hellfire glared at her like she was a ghost. Then he charged the rails, iron hooves rattling the boards, dust spraying. Any sane soul would have leapt back. Eliza didn't move. She only whispered something under her breath, not to him, but to herself. A promise, maybe. A memory. Every day she came. Every day the stallion tested her, snorting, rearing, biting at the air. And every day she stood her ground, patient, steady, letting him see her without asking for anything. Darrow found himself watching, too. At first, it was curiosity. Then it became something else. He studied the way her fingers twitched when the horse pressed too close, the tiny flinches at sudden noise, the soft winces when she lifted buckets. And slowly, he began to understand. This wasn't only about the horse. This was about her. She was healing. One night, over burnt beans and silence, Darrow asked, "Why'd you come here, really?" She didn't look up. "Because I was tired of being afraid." That was all. He didn't press. But in the days that followed, something began to shift. Not just in the corral, where Hellfire had started to drift closer, curious. Not just in the way Eliza began humming as she worked. Soft lullabies that sounded like safety. It shifted in Darrow, too. He found himself leaving extra firewood at her door, fixing a loose shutter without her asking, clearing the mud path to the barn when the rains came. And she noticed, not with words, but with fleeting glances, the kind that said, "I see you." One morning, she stepped inside the pen. Darrow nearly dropped his hammer. "No rope," he called. "No need." Hellfire stood at the far end, ears forward. Eliza crouched in the dirt and began humming that same tune. Slowly, impossibly, the stallion stepped forward. 10 feet. 5. Then he reached his muzzle toward her shoulder. Eliza closed her eyes. A tear slipped down her cheek, but she didn't move. It was the horse who leaned in. Later, when Darrow found her brushing dust from her dress, he didn't know what to say, so he said nothing. He just stared, shaken and amazed. She finally spoke. "People don't need to be broken, Mr. Darrow. They need space to breathe." Someone who stays even when they're scared. He had no answer, because her words had touched a place in him he hadn't opened in years. The next morning, Darrow poured coffee for two. She smiled at the extra cup, and for the first time in a long while, he smiled back. By the week's end, Hellfire followed Eliza like a shadow. She brushed him, saddled him, even led him in slow circles with nothing more than a loose rope and a calm voice. No rearing, no bucking, only trust. The ranch hands began whispering. "She's bewitched," one muttered. "Ain't natural," said another. Darrow shut them down fast. "You like your wages, keep your mouth shut." But the resentment only deepened. 30 men had tried and failed, and now a mail-order bride was doing what none of them could. It ate at them, especially Jake. Jake had been thrown from Hellfire 5 months earlier, hard enough to crack a collarbone. Since the day Eliza arrived, he'd been watching, bitterness simmering in his gut. She's not training the horse. Jake spat one night in the bunkhouse. She's softening the boss. Mark my words, she's after his money. By dawn, Eliza could feel the shift in the air. Eyes lingered too long. Darrow's silence grew heavier. Even Hellfire stamped restless in the pen. That evening, she found Jake by the barn, yanking saddle straps tight like he meant to strangle leather. "You don't belong here," he said without looking at her. "I belong where I choose to," she replied. He sneered. "You think you're better than us? You think humming and crying makes you strong?" She gave no answer. She didn't need to. But that night, someone left Hellfire's gate unlatched. The Stallion didn't run. He stayed close, trembling, wild-eyed, until Eliza found him by the creek before dawn. It took nearly an hour to soothe him. Her hands shook with rage as she led him back. Darrow was waiting. "You left his gate open," she accused. His face was stone. "No, but I know who did." "Then fire him." "I will. But that's not why you're angry." Her eyes burned. "You think I came here to play you? To win your land? Your heart." Darrow stepped closer, jaw clenched. "I don't know what to think anymore." Her voice cracked like glass. "Then let me make it plain. I came here with nothing. No family, no future. Just scars no one could see and a hope I might belong somewhere. That horse let me stay because I didn't flinch when he was wild. That horse is me, Mr. Darrow. If you can't see that, maybe you're not the man I thought you were." She turned and walked away. For the first time in years, Darrow felt afraid. Not of the Stallion, not of men's whispers, but of losing something he hadn't even admitted he wanted. Her. The night was restless. The sky low, cloud swollen, thunder grumbling across the plains. The ranch was a pot ready to boil. Jake was gone from his bunk. So was Darrow's rifle. By the time Darrow caught the sound of hooves, it was too late. Hellfire's scream split the dark, wild and furious. Eliza's cry followed, sharp, terrified. Darrow ran. In the corral, lightning lit the scene. Jake had mounted Hellfire bareback, spurring him cruelly, yanking at his mane as the Stallion twisted and reared. Eliza stood in the mud, arms out, begging the horse to see her, not the man crushing him. Darrow's voice roared over the storm. "Jake, get down." But Jake only laughed, half mad. "This horse will kill me before I quit, and I'll take her faith with me." Hellfire bucked, a blur of muscle and fury. Jake's grip slipped. He clawed for balance, boots scraping Eliza's shoulder as she shielded the horse's path. She fell. The Stallion rose over her, hooves flashing death. Darrow's body moved before his mind. He leapt the fence, slammed into Eliza, dragging her into the dirt just as Hellfire came crashing down. Jake tumbled, thrown hard, the wind knocked clean from him. Then stillness. Rain pounded. Thunder faded. Hellfire stood trembling, sides heaving, but his eyes found Eliza. Slowly, he lowered his head, pressing his muzzle against her chest like a child seeking shelter. Eliza broke, not from fear, never that, from release. Tears streamed as she wrapped her arms around a great beast's neck. Jake lay moaning in the mud. Darrow didn't spare him a glance. His eyes were fixed on her, on the woman who had turned a demon horse gentle. who had turned his silence into longing. "Eliza," he said, voice rough, "you don't have to run anymore." She looked up, rain streaking her face, hair plastered to her cheeks. "And if I stay?" Darrow reached for her hand, callous fingers trembling like a boy's. "Then I reckon this ranch won't feel so empty no more." Hellfire snorted, tossing his mane, as if in agreement. The storm rolled past, leaving the world washed clean. And in the quiet after, man, woman, and beast stood together, three souls scarred unbroken, bound not by fear but by trust.